The voice of the drum calls. It sings a song of those who came before us and those to come. A song of survival and strength. A song of participation and voice. A song that calls us together. When we come together and participate in the 2010 census, we use this tool as the voice of all our Native people. Our voice. It is in our hands. 2010 census.
Welcome to this edition of the Native News Update on this Thursday, May 13th. I'm your host for today's program, Paul DeMain. Many of the stories read here can also be found at our website at IndianCountryNews.com. And here are some of the news stories for the day from the Associated Press and other Native news sources. The Blackfeet Tribal Business Council has approved $5.5 million. That's part of a reservation oil exploration deal to buy land, build a grocery store, and give each tribal member a $200 payment. Chairman Willie Sharp Jr. said the council approved the plan late last month. Sharp said the money is coming from an agreement the tribe in northwest Montana signed in December with Houston-based Newfield Production Company to allow test wells in the middle of the reservation. Tribal officials have not released the value of the agreement, but Sharp gave some insight. Quote, "We still have millions left," unquote, after spending the $5.5 million, he said. A descendant of the elm tree that shaded Philadelphia founder William Penn and a Lenape chief as they signed a treaty of peace and friendship more than 3 centuries ago has been replanted in a park that now stands on the site. The tree, called the Great Elm, where Penn and Chief Tamaneed of the Lenape Turtle Clan were said to have met along the Delaware River, was famous from a 1771 painting by Benjamin West. A storm uprooted the tree in 1810, and though it was replaced by an obelisk, many were concerned about the loss of such a symbol of equality and harmony. So a group gathered last week at the site in what is now called Penn Treaty Park in the Fishtown section of the city to replant an 18-foot clipping of the Great Elm, which Haverford College horticulturist Carol Wagner said was given to the college by former park owner General Paul Oliver. Wagner said the college has nurtured seedlings of offsprings of the elm since the original fell, replanting the clippings and growing the descendants from its seedlings. And today, for the first time, we talk with Marley Shebala of the Navajo Times from Window Rock, Arizona, where a big controversy has been brewing around an anti-immigration law signed by the governor recently, and the potential impact on people who look like they might be illegal, though they may have been here long before the Arizona governor or more recent immigrants.
Marley, tell us what kinds of issues, what kind of stories have come up that the Navajo Times and yourself are covering there down out of the Window Rock office.
We, when the first story, when they passed the first law dealing with the anti-immigration, one of our reporters up in the middle of the reservation interviewed several residents of the Navajo Reservation. And all of them were very much afraid of how it was going to affect them because they feel that Navajos look like Mexicans, right. And so that they would be targeted. And some of the Navajo employees have been actually advised to carry around cards with their photographs, identification cards that show that they're from the Navajo Nation. And the Navajo Nation Council is even thinking of perhaps challenging the law.
Right. Let me ask this question here. Give me a little bit of an idea of the configuration of the Navajo Nation for people who are listening in. They're trying to look in on this. Part of the reservation is in Arizona, or how much of it is in Arizona? Quite a big chunk, actually.
Oh, yeah, a huge chunk of the reservation is in Arizona. Up in the northern, I guess it would be the around the Four Corners area by Utah, Colorado, and New Mexico. And so there's a huge part of the reservation that's in that area. And then you have a little strip around a portion of New Mexico, and then a little bit of Utah.
Okay. And there's a lot of calls around the country for a boycott of Arizona businesses and going to Arizona. Is that something, for example, I'm supposed to come down there for a meeting in June, and if I was against this bill. I would prefer not to spend any money in the Arizona side of the Navajo reservation. I guess I could go down the street a little bit and get into the New Mexico side of it. But what is that going to have an impact on the Navajo Nation?
I don't think it is, because there was a group that is going to be meeting in Tucson, the NAISA, which is the Native American and Indigenous Studies Association. And the way that they were going to handle this was to take their business to the nearest reservation. And actually, reservations, Indian land, Indian countries, is not a part of states. We have never been a state. We are not part of the state, and except that we are state citizens. But there's that history of this jealousy of the states over Indian nations because of our status with the federal government.
Right, indeed. So it might be an opportunity not only for the reservations to maybe get added economic stimulus, because people are going to go there to support them almost as an anti-immigration bill statement. But, again, this organization is coming down there and holding their conference there at a time when a lot of other organizations are canceling out. It's almost similar to the Native American Journalists Association in Seattle, Washington in the year 1999, where they went there and used that forum in Seattle, Washington as a forum for talking about affirmative action, which the state of Washington had just said they had abolished affirmative action. Unity went there anyway and used it as a tool. Is that something that, Navajo Nation, is there some way that they can utilize that as a learning tool for this? I mean, number one, I think a lot of people are afraid about being stopped. But on the other end of it, maybe there's an opportunity here.
Well, I think that they are afraid of the law because it does allow for them, number one, to be stopped, which is racial profiling, could be, and then if they don't have the proper identification, they can actually be arrested for a while until they get their proper identification. And if you look at where Navajo is at, Phoenix and Tucson are between 5 to 7 hour drives south. And so you have a lot of, there's graduation going on. So you have a lot of Navajos that travel a lot. And there was already an instance where there were some Navajo women who had gone to a conference in California across the border. One of them didn't have enough identification, and she was retained, and the other individual was allowed to go across, and she was able to get her documents or her identification, take it back, and get her across the border. This was even before the anti-immigration law was passed.
Right.
And Flagstaff, which is a town that borders the Navajo Reservation, Flagstaff, Arizona, they're going to have a march on May 22nd that to oppose the anti-immigration law. And now there's a law that was just passed that is banning ethnic studies in public schools. And it's focused on the La Raza, which is Hispanic. And it clearly says, well, Native American studies are exempt from this. But there's still discussion among professors, one of them being Jennifer Denetel. And she is very concerned because she said this, she believes that it deals with human rights. And that traditionally we have always recognized all of life, not just the five fingers, but, all of life. And Cleve Anali, which he has worked on the recognition of San Francisco Peaks as a sacred site. He's also very much against both of these bills, saying that they are violations of human rights. And people should understand that the individuals who are coming across the border are indigenous people too. They're fleeing from their own police brutality. They're fleeing from terrorism there, and a lot of it has to do with American corporations.
Oh, well, we're almost out of time today, Marley, but what I want to do is, where can people find some of these stories? The Navajo Times is covering some of these firsthand stories of people experiencing these things. Where can people go to find the Navajo Times and order a copy if they'd like to, or look at it online?
You can go online to our website, NavajoTimes.com. That's
Okay.
NAVATIMES.com.
Okay, we'll put that on the banner too. Thanks, Marley, for
Okay.
joining with us, and we'll do this again next week and get an update or so.
Great. Thank you. Yeah. Ako na.
And that is the latest roundup of news from Indian Country on this edition of the Native News Update. We want to thank all of you for joining with us. Miigwech!